Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal program.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep, put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
You know, one of the things that I have always believed in is that business leaders have to get more involved in this thing that we call politics, but not so much politics, but the policies that are being brought forward, the policies that are being passed, because it does affect our free market economic system. And so often you see a lot of leaders in the business sector that kind of shy away from it, just the same as we see some church leaders shying away from these things, which they should not. But I think it's very important because business leaders have to have that interaction, that contact and communication with their employees to get them to understand why they're making some of the decisions that they have to make. So I thought it'd be great to have a conversation today with an incredible local businessman by the name of Monty Bennett. Monty Bennett is a notable figure in the hospitality industry, serving as the founder, chairman, and CEO of Ashford Incorporated, the founder and chairman of Ashford Hospitality Trust and Braemar Hotels and Resorts, as well as the publisher and a board member of the Dallas Express, a local independent news outlet. Bennett is also a prominent Dallas business leader and philanthropist. Boy, I tell you, you can tell I'm from Georgia. Sir, thank you so much for joining us, and it's great to have a good conversation with you, Mr. Bennett.
Call me Monty, please. Thank you, Colonel.
All right. Well, you got to call me Alan then. Fair
Okay.
enough. All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your background and history because, you know, just the same as my father was a soldier in World War II and I followed his footsteps, your father was also in the hospitality industry. Tell us about that impact that that had on you and how you pursued this and, of course, your education at Cornell.
He had a great impact on me, and he was a leader in the hospitality industry here in Texas and was Marriott's largest franchisee at one point and owned more hotels in the Southwest than anyone owned hotels and did very well for himself. And when it came time for college, I have an identical twin brother, and we didn't know what to do for college. And my father said, well, why don't you go to Cornell's hotel school? And so that sounded as good as anything to us. And so up we both went. And then we stayed on to get our business degree there, our MBAs. Then he went into full-time ministry. And then I went into working with my father for 10 years before I started to branch out on my own.
Now, when you talk about Cornell's hospitality school, are there many others like that replicated across the country in our colleges and universities?
There are, and there's more and more all the time. The University of Denver has a school. The University of Houston has a great program. There's quite a few around the country.
So when you look at where your father was and where you are today, kind of share with us the changes you've seen in the hospitality industry.
The changes have been enormous. I never would have thought that I've seen such changes in such an industry as hospitality. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was an industry that wasn't nearly as sophisticated as it is now. It had just a few brands out there in the industry. And now there are hundreds of different brands, a lot of sophistication in how hotels are operated, a lot of different opportunities for different management companies and locations, and it's just a world of difference. We've also been through some interesting times in the past 30 years with regular recessions, along with the horrors and terrible of 9/11, then the great financial crisis, and then COVID. So it's been an interesting run up and run down.
Well, let's talk about that because I found it interesting and unique. I mean, you came in and you took over about 3 to 5 hotels and expanded that to 150, if I'm correct, thereabout?
We started the Ashford Hospitality Trust platform with about 6 hotels,
Yeah.
and then we expanded it into over 100 hotels. And over time, we've bought businesses that service the hotel industry. And so, in one way or the other, we touch about 700 hotels today, whether through ownership, through management, through providing audiovisual services, water sports services, you name it.
And so it's about diversifying that, industry as well to meet the ever-changing environment that you're in, I would suppose.
Yes, yes. We were just in hotel real estate and a little bit in hotel management before, but now we've diversified into other services and expanding into other types of real estate as well.
Let's talk about the thing that you brought up, the regulatory environment, then also COVID. Let's start with COVID. I mean, something totally unexpected, and then all of a sudden, government officials are making decisions about your industry. How did you respond to that? How did you react to that? Because you had to be so flexible.
It was tough. It was a tough time. We went from 13,000 employees during COVID to 1,300 employees in about 13 days. So we had to furlough people so fast. Our business levels dropped dramatically. We have a very high fixed cost business in the hotel business, and just 3%, 5% movements in revenue can make tremendous differences on the bottom line.
Mhm.
And we dropped about 90% in the month of May. We had hotels where we had one room to rent. We didn't want to close down because of the challenges of getting certificates of occupancy to open back up. So we'd have the general manager sit in the lobby and have one room to let and operate like that for quite a while until business started to come back. It was an absolute disaster.
Now, were you able to recover those employees and bring them back in once we got to full operating capacity once again?
Ultimately, but it took a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of the people left the workforce and they went to work in Amazon warehouses or they went other places. And then as business started to come back, we reached out to these people, but they had jobs. And we had to coax a whole new generation of people to come into the hospitality industry that hadn't been in it before. So it took the whole industry quite a while in order to staff back up.
Now, did you see some challenges because you're saying you had to go back out into a new employee pool? What were some of the challenges you had with the government and competing with them in the open market to get people to come back and want to work?
Government's been a challenge in a number of areas, whether it's closing everything down, which was a problem, or some of their relief programs that were putatively designed to help weren't so helpful. Um, it was difficult. The airlines received essentially just free money from the government,
Hmm.
but the hotel industry, which was impacted as much, did not receive that. Some were able to take advantage of PPP loans and that kind of thing, but you could only get them under certain circumstances, and it was a difficult time. And yes, when people had jobs with the government or elsewhere, then it made it difficult for us to hire them back.
You've got to be frustrated because when I look at that, and I sat on the small business committee when I was up there in Congress. Government should not be in the business of picking the winners and losers, as you just articulated. You can't say, "Oh, we're going to do this for the airline industry," but then here's a hospitality industry. We're not going to extend that. Talk about your level of frustration when you see that. Maybe not just in your particular industry, but overall.
It was very frustrated, and what was even more frustrated was at the time what was weaponization of the government. Is that it came out in the papers that I had been a Trump supporter, and so then there's this furor about me not shouldn't be able to take PPP monies, which is silly. I was certainly authorized to do it, but even though as a private citizen, Chuck Schumer was tweeting that quote Monty Bennett should give that money back, and Joe Biden was tweeting that my company Ashford should be investigated. And sure enough, I had been public for 20 years with no issues. And now that I'd lost almost all my employees and we had tens of millions of dollars walking out the door every month, which was very difficult, the SEC calls up and decided that now they wanted to do an investigation of the company to make sure of X, Y, and Z. There was nothing that they could point to that was a problem. They just wanted to, quote, review some things. And then here, 3 weeks later, the Department of Justice calls up and they decided that they want to interview some people at the company. It was just a mass attack on us at a time when we were really, really struggling. And it was tough. We pushed back. We asked the DOJ what their predicate was, which they're supposed to have some kind of predicate before they do any kind of investigation. Of course, they had none. And we later found out through rumor mills it was because someone up in the government had called the local office and said something along the lines of, "Oh, you just need to investigate these people because they're bad," because they saw it in the news as well, which was silly. And then the SEC launched their investigation to related party transactions. And after a year and a half, they later said, "Okay, investigation done. Everything's fine." And you never hear it from the SEC. They always want to extract some pound of flesh. They want to say, "Well, you could have done this better, pay some money." They didn't even ask. They just left. But I want to ask you, do you know how hard it is to raise rescue capital when you're under investigation by the SEC? It's not easy. It was very difficult, and most people wouldn't want anything to do with it. And not only were they picking winners and losers, but they were actively interfering with the company and with our ability to stay afloat and the jobs of thousands and thousands of people. But they just don't care. And they took their pound of flesh. They weren't successful in dragging us under, but they cost us millions and millions of dollars. And then they move on to their next target. So government has many places, and there's a lot of great places for government. But in many cases in this country, government has gotten out of control, and they create way more problems than they claim to solve.
I would have never thought that I'm just 63, that I would see that, like you just articulated, the weaponization of government against businesses. I mean, this is not just third world, this is fourth or fifth world type of stuff, the things that you would think in the old Soviet Union or the East German Stasi state. And this whole thing of lawfare, it really has to be ended. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk to you about your role with Dallas Express and what we see happening here locally, because I think it does get back to you saying, you know what, we've got to get government responsive to us and not the opposite way around. So people, be on the standby. We'll be right back after these commercial breaks with Monty Bennett to discuss the Dallas Hero Initiatives.
Hey folks, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here at Watchtower Firearms. This is the custom designed AR-15 that was just made for me. It's got my Steadfast and Loyal logo there. On this side, you can see my signature, my master parachutist wings, of course, American flag. And I just want to tell you that you can't be a great American unless you have a great American weapon. And that's exactly what Watchtower Firearms is building. Great American weapons, all American parts, manufactured right here in the great state of Texas. And oh, by the way, let me see, where is the serial number on this one? TX 1836. If you're from Texas, I think you know what that means. God bless you. God bless Watchtower.
Hit, dead center. Yes.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal program. We're having a great conversation with Monty Bennett, who is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Ashford Incorporated. He is also the publisher and a board member of Dallas Express, a local news outlet here in the city of Dallas, which covers a lot of North Texas. And we were talking, Monty, about this weaponization and this lawfare thing and the right relationship between the private sector and the public sector. What drove you to get involved with Dallas Express and to stand that up? Because it is very successful and it is really and truthfully something of the people.
Well, it was what you're saying, Alan, in that I've lived in Dallas for 30 years, and I'd never gotten involved locally. And I thought it was high time and I wanted to make up for lost time. And I knew that as I pushed for change and for reform, that there was going to be controversy. Whenever you want to change something, there is controversy. And I couldn't agree more with your precept there about how business leaders need to be involved in government. And all of us need to be involved in government in some way or another, lending where we can, not from a standpoint of having a handout and expecting contracts from the government, but lending our expertise in helping govern. And I think a lot of people stepped back from that over the past several decades. And as a result, there's been this huge divide between government and between the people and between government and businesses. And so I knew that if I was going to get involved, I needed what I call air cover to report on these things and to report the news as most people would see it. The local news has become so far, far left that you can't pick it up without having these opinions forced upon you. You can't sit and just talk about issues and reasonable people believing. They just assume certain things to be true and that aren't true. And so I started the Dallas Express. And here more recently, a group of people started to put together what are called the Dallas Hero Charter Amendments. These are 3 charter amendments that are on the ballot here in November. And early on, I got involved and I started to help because I really, really believe in them. And they're really pretty straightforward. These charter amendments aim to force the city to have focus. Right now, the city of Dallas is at a very special point. It could become the leading city in the United States as cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York go by the wayside. But the city of Dallas is on the same track as those other cities where crime is starting to move up. People are moving out of the downtown. We're losing citizens. The population of the city of Dallas is declining, even though the population of North Texas is absolutely booming.
Yes.
And people aren't moving downtown. And it's a problem. But our city council people and mayor, they just continue to do the same things of having huge increases in the budget. The city budget this year increased by something like $400 million. And you ask them where all the money's going, and it's just a bunch of words and gobbledygook with all their special projects and all their grift and all their friends to their contracts to their friends. It's terrible. And meanwhile, crime is a huge problem. So they'll say with their mouth that crime is a problem, but then they won't allocate any additional money to it to solve it. And they wring their hands and act like there's just no way of solving it when it's just silly. All they have to do is stop their grift projects and instead put the money towards the crime problem and it'll be solved. But they don't. So these charter amendments force the city to focus on 5 main areas. And these areas are crime reduction, reducing the panhandling, solving homelessness, street repair, and then cleanliness around the city. So the city now tries to do 500 things, all poorly. And these charter amendments focus them on these basic city services first. And then after that, they can go do and spend their money on whatever else they need. And there are other needs for the city, no question about it. But it's a matter of focusing. And boy, you would have thought that I kicked over an ant heap. I mean,
yes, you did.
Crazy. They're going crazy. And former mayors are going crazy, and current mayors and former council people. And you look at it, and when someone can't give you a straight reason why they're for or against something, you know there's another reason that they're not wanting to say. And there is no straight reason. You can't sit here and say that crime's a problem, which it is, and it needs to be solved, which it does, but then not support these amendments. So the issue is, what is the real reason? And I'm not sure what the real reason is, but I become very suspicious because it makes me think that there's grift and graft and pet projects and all kinds of things going along because they will not put money to solve and address these problems. And as a citizen of Dallas, although I don't live in Dallas now, I live in the Park Cities. I had to move out because crime was so bad. And I want to move my headquarters downtown Dallas, but my employees won't have it. The downtown Dallas crime rate is 15 times that of downtown Fort Worth. 15 times.
Yeah.
And Bank of America is moving out of downtown to uptown. They're moving a third of a mile to get out of downtown, and they're going to pay triple the rent in order to do it. And if you ask them, not with camera lights around, but if you ask them directly, they'll tell you crime is just too bad.
Yeah.
Yet the city leaders will not admit to that. And so it's a problem.
And the amazing thing about these charter amendments, these are citizen-led charter amendments. You went out, you got the signatures from people, you did everything that you're asked to do to get them on the ballot for November the 5th. And that's one of the reasons we tell people, make sure you go out and you vote all the way down the ballot, especially in the city of Dallas. But this comes back to what we discussed in our first segment, where you have the government that is constantly telling you how to run your life and run your business and to weaponize itself against you. But yet, when you turn to the government and say, hey, look, we provide the resources for you to operate under, we should have a say so in how you are expending those resources and the priorities thereof. Do you see this hypocrisy as abjectly laughable?
It's really amazing. And it gets worse than that. Not only did Dallas Hero get 170,000 signatures to put them on the ballot, but the city, when they were doing their ministerial duty of actually placing them on the ballot, the city council was apoplectic. And so they wanted to stop them. So what they did is they came up with 3 different charter amendments that completely nullified the Dallas Hero charter amendments and put those on the ballot too, but didn't disclose that they nullified the Dallas Hero charter amendments. They were completely deceptive, so that if you voted for these other city charter amendments without knowing it, you would gut the Dallas Hero charter amendments. And so Dallas Hero had to file straight to the Texas Supreme Court with a mandamus action, and the Texas Supreme Court 9-0 handed down a verdict, slapping down the city, saying, you can't do that. You can't just mislead people on the ballot. So not only are they not helpful, not only do they fight, but they're not above blatantly misleading, intentionally, purposely misleading their own constituents. And you could read the Supreme Court decision yourself, and it says that's what they're trying to do. And they're shameless. And now that didn't work, they're trying other methods of trying to get it work and going on news programs and having fits and on and on. When someone is this crazed about something, you have to scratch your head and ask why. Are they really so concerned about how the city is going to be operated? Or is there something else going on? Because I can tell you this, when they were elected leaders, they weren't this concerned about the city. All you had to do is look how they ran the city.
Yeah.
And the city has gotten worse. The Dallas city itself is awesome, and I love it, and the people are great, and there's great things to do. But you look at city government management, and it's been terrible for a decade. So they can't be really concerned about the management of the city of Dallas. So what are they concerned about? It raises a lot of questions about what's going on and where all the money's going to.
You know, the thing that I see happening, and you just talked about how current and former mayors and city council officials, but it's also Republicans and Democrats. I think you see a bipartisan face of political elitism. What are the dangers to you of this political elitism, not just at the local level, but all the way through as it permeates in our society, in our culture?
Well, it creates 2 classes. It creates the elites, Republicans and Democrats, or elected officials and people that are part of the bureaucracy, and then everyone else. And the former are in control of so many levers of power. And so the people that pay all the taxes and contribute for a nice functioning system get the raw end of the deal. And there's a lot of good people in these places, don't get me wrong, that work hard and work for the government and do their job. Many. But unfortunately, too much of it's controlled by people that are self-interested, and they're interested in inuring more power to themselves. And for whatever reason, for more economics or for power or for influence, whatever. And this is what they do. And it's a growing problem. And the bigger the government is, the more of a problem it is. The budget for Dallas is approximately $5 billion. This is a big enterprise. And when you look at the city council people and the mayor, these people aren't qualified to run a $5 billion enterprise, not even close. And they couldn't get a job near the top of any $5 billion enterprise. Yet they run our city, and they are shocked when the citizens want something different than what they're delivering. And that is what's happening with these hero amendments. So if you like the way the city is being run, the city government, vote against these amendments. If you think that there's a lot of room for improvement for the city in the areas of crime and homelessness and the like, well, then vote for them. And I can assure you, the world is not going to end, and all these terrible things and fear mongering that these people say are going to happen won't happen. It never does. We know that. We've heard it our entire lives.
Yeah, I hate the fear mongering. That's not an aspect of leadership. You know, when I was on the battlefield, I never would have told my soldiers, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. I mean, why would you be in a position of leadership? You're supposed to inspire people and do what is necessary to have victory and success. How can people follow you? How can people follow the Dallas Hero initiatives? And what can they do to make sure that this is of real importance? And of course, you know, and lots of times people don't go down the ballot. What's your recommendations?
Well, they need to go all the way down the ballot and just read the initiatives. And if it sounds something reasonable to do, vote for it. And if it doesn't sound reasonable, vote against it. But don't listen to all the fear mongering. You can follow me on Twitter, mbennett at mbennett ashford, or you can go to the Dallas Hero website. I think it's just dallashero.org, and contribute or get involved. Tell your neighbors to vote and to go all the way down the ballot. But these charter amendments are eminently reasonable, and they know it. And that's why they're so scared that they can only win and defeat them with fear mongering. And so that's what they're going to continue to do.
Well, Monty Bennett, I want to thank you so very much for joining us here on the Steadfast and Loyal program. And ladies and gentlemen, there are only three things that these amendments are about, these city charter amendments: safety and security, which you should want, and the responsibility and accountability of bureaucrats and elected officials there in the city of Dallas. Dallas is an incredible city. I live in Garland, but I have a lot of things that I do down in Dallas, and I want to be safe when I go down into the city. So thank you so very much, and we firmly support amendments Sierra Tango and Uniform STU, and we want you to do so as well. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Before they burn it down.